Hello, my friends, and how are you today? I'm trying something a little bit different today. We are here on StreamYard, and I'm going to be playing with this version of a live streaming software so that we can play and do some different things, have some guests come on in the future. So bear with me as I learn some new software. Well, I am going to just take a look at my audio. We do have a little music playing right now, so I'm going to just reduce that music and go ahead and introduce myself. I am Sue Pelland from Sue Pelland Designs, and I just love to play with applique. So let's go ahead and do some playing today here in my studio. In my studio, we're going to be doing some critters today. All of my students love my critter videos that are in our Ahead of the Curve membership. And I had a special request to explore some butterflies today. We have done turtles and bunnies and kitties and pigs. And did I say bunnies? We've done bees and dragonflies and all types of critters. I can't even remember all of them. Hummingbirds and different types of birds, even squirrels. So we love to make applique shapes, and my take on applique is to be cutting out our applique shapes with a rotary cutter. So I'm really curious to know if you have tried rotary cut applique. So go ahead and put in the comments whether or not you have tried rotary cut applique, or if it's something that you'd like to play around with. So go ahead and send me some comments. Let me know if you are seeing me on Facebook. Again, trying something new, want to make sure that this is working. So let's just pop on over to Facebook and see what's happening over there. All right, so today we're going to play with butterflies. And in order to do that, I've gone online and I've printed out some beautiful little butterfly outlines. So these are the types of butterflies we want to play with today. So let's go ahead and start to play. Hey, Savannah, good morning. Glad that you're here. Thanks for sending a comment that I know that StreamYard is working. Thank you so much. So if you are online, let me know where you're coming from. And we're going to get started with trying to design some butterflies for applique. Let me go ahead and see if I can change this camera. Let's see. So this is something new for me, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to change to my overhead camera. So let me give this a good old college try. Yeah, and I don't think that that's going to work. So what we're going to do is I'm going to work right here in my studio where you can all see me. So let me just work right here at my workstation, and I'll do a little bit of rearranging. Let me get that chair out of the way so you'll be able to see what we're doing. So in my Rotary Cut Applique course that I call the Intro to Rotary Cut Applique, the techniques for Leaves Galore templates, we do this butterfly in that class. And this butterfly is made up with standard leaf shapes. There's a skinny standard leaf right in the middle, and I'm going to show you how to do that here today. And we also have some lemon-shaped leaves. So Savannah, I know that you've learned how to make lemon-shaped leaves in our gradations course. So this is something that you could make with your lemon-shaped leaves. And Terry, good morning from New Mexico. Wonderful to have you here. So let's go ahead and look at how to make a butterfly like this one. And then we'll start to discover some of these other shapes and how we can put that together as well. So I'm just going to rearrange here a little bit, get my my table up a little further so you'll be able to see what I'm doing. Now, in order to create our butterfly, I've just started getting a little bit of fabric prepared. So let's prepare some fabric together. And as you know, I love using Misty Fuse. So I need to get a little bit of Misty Fuse on this fabric. And if you're new to me, you might be new to Misty Fuse as well. Misty Fuse is my favorite fusible web. It is the softest, nicest fusible web out on the market today. I absolutely love using Misty Fuse. But in order to use that Misty Fuse, we need to put it on with either an applique pressing sheet or a piece of parchment paper from your grocery store. Now, I do strongly recommend the applique pressing sheet. It works so much better than the parchment paper for putting the fusible onto your fabrics, because the parchment paper will work for 1 or 2 times, and then you're going to end up throwing it away. It gets all dry and very crinkly when you use parchment paper to put the fusible on your fabric. Now, in a pinch, it's absolutely a possibility. And I've got some parchment paper here where I can show you how you can use that parchment paper instead of the applique pressing sheet. But I really prefer using the applique pressing sheet for a whole bunch of reasons. First, it has a non-stick surface that lasts for years and years to come. So you can invest in that pressing sheet, and you are going to use that for the next 5, even 10 years. Now, I use mine every single day, and those applique pressing sheets last me about 5 years. So even using it every single day, it's got a very, very long life. Now, the applique pressing sheet that I use is called the Fat Goddess Sheet by Misty Fuse. And the first thing I do is I make sure it doesn't have any fusible residue on there from using it previously. Then I put my fabric pretty side down on that applique pressing sheet, lay out my Misty Fuse on the back of that fabric, and cut that Misty Fuse to size. So I often work with 12-inch wide pieces of fabric because my roll of Misty Fuse here is, let's see, I'm looking for my scissors. My roll of Misty Fuse is 12 inches wide. So if I cut a yard of fabric into 1/3 yard increments, I can get 3 strips, 12 inches by the width of fabric, and then I can take sections off of them, like this 12 by 12 inch piece, and fuse that with the Misty Fuse and be ready to design my applique. So I don't always use 12 by 12 pieces, but if I don't know what I'm going to make, 12 by 12 is a great standard size to start with. So I've just got this dark pink fabric here, and I'll fuse up a piece of this light pink batik as well. And then we can get started cutting out for our butterflies. So the technique that I use for applique is fusible applique using that Misty Fuse. So I'm right now applying the Misty Fuse to the back of my fabric. Then I'm going to peel away that applique pressing sheet, leaving the fusible behind on the fabric. And I just started to lift up the pressing sheet, and it wasn't pressed well enough. So I'm just going over it again with my nice hot iron, and then peel away that applique pressing sheet. And there we go. We've got beautiful fabric and fusible together. Now, generally, I like to do this ahead of time, because if you let your fabric and your fusible cool for about 15 minutes, it loses that tackiness that it has, and it's only tacky while it's warm. So letting that come to room temperature is all you need to do to have that fusible go back to its natural dry state. So I'm going to be covering a whole bunch of different applique shapes during our applique school next week. So if you haven't already signed up for applique school, go ahead onto my website, SuePellinDesigns.com, and you can sign up for applique school, where I do a lot of these demonstrations. But even more so, on applique school, we're going to be playing around with hand applique, with fusible applique, and with a pretty unique technique called glue applique. And I will give you the pros and cons of each one of those methods for making your applique quilts. So let's get this pink fused up, and then we'll be ready to cut out some butterflies. Okay, Applique School is a great little introduction to Rotary Cut Applique. Now, many of you have already been to Applique School, but it's always fun to come back and see what's on special, what we're offering at Applique School, as well as just getting a refresher course on these applique techniques. Now today here on Sewing in Slippers, we're starting at the beginning with applying Misty Fuse to your fabric. And we don't often do that here at Sewing in Slippers with Sue, but this is just your chance to work right alongside me as I am playing around with different ideas for future applique quilts. So since you're able to be right here in the studio with me, you get to see the whole process, whether it's preparation or cutting or fusing or stitching. So feel free to join us every Tuesday at 11 o'clock here on Sewing in Slippers with Sue. And keep an eye on my newsletter, because I have a whole lot of travel coming up over the next couple of months. So there will be at least once a month where I am not here for Sewing in Slippers. So just be aware that it won't be every single week. And if you miss us live, you can absolutely catch us on the replay on our Facebook page, our Rotary Cut Applique Facebook group, and now on YouTube as well. So that's the reason why I switched over here onto StreamYard. Using StreamYard, I'm able to live stream this video in 3 places. I can live stream to my Facebook page, my Facebook group, and to YouTube at the same time. So if you're joining me on YouTube, welcome back. It's been a while since I've been over here. So now that I have my fabrics fused, and I just did 2 fabrics, I'm going to start cutting out some common applique shapes that I might be able to use for my butterflies. And the first butterfly I'm going to make is this one with the lemon-shaped leaves. So I want to show you how to assemble that lemon-shaped leaf butterfly. So I'm going to cut with my 2.5-inch Leaves Galore tool. And the first cut is just a serpentine line from top to bottom of my fabric. And when I'm cutting with the 2.5-inch curve, I'm going to get nice, small lemon-shaped leaves. And to make a lemon-shaped leaf, I'm simply going to put peaks and valleys together. The peaks of my curve, the valley where I cut before, come together to make beautiful lemon-shaped leaves. Now, I'm just doing this by eye, so my lemon shapes might not be perfectly symmetrical, but they're close enough for applique. Remember, applique is very forgiving. We're not piecing, so we don't need to have things that are exactly precise. If you get that lemon shape, you're good to go. Okay, so we have 2 lemon-shaped leaves from each of our colors. And now I'm going to take that leftover piece. Remember, I cut that serpentine off first, and normally it's snug right in there, and that's how I cut my standard leaves. Well, I don't want to cut a whole bunch of standard leaves right now, so I'm just going to use this little piece. I don't want it to go to waste. I'm going to cut out 2.5-inch leaves from that little remaining piece of fabric, and then I can throw the rest in the trash there. So now I have a couple of standard leaves and a couple of lemon-shaped leaves, and I'm going to turn this around, and I'm going to cut a little piece using my 5-inch Leaves Galore tool. I'm just going to cut that from the edge of the fabric, and I'm going to go halfway across that 5-inch curve, so putting the straight line of the 5-inch curve on the edge of the fabric. Now I know I don't have that overhead camera, and that is one of the drawbacks of StreamYard. And that's why I had switched from StreamYard to Zoom, because on Zoom I can change my camera angles, and on StreamYard I'm not able to. So let me know if you're getting a good enough view from right in front, because with StreamYard I can't go overhead, and with StreamYard I can be on YouTube. So there's pluses and minuses to both platforms. I'm going to take that curve that I just cut. So I cut basically a half of a leaf, straight line on one side, 5-inch curve on the other side. Now I'm going to come across and I'm going to cut the other 5-inch curve going the opposite direction. I'm just centering that curve. I can go as wide as I can and then go ahead and cut that other half. So you can see I end up with a skinny leaf, and that's such a nice shape. And I'm playing around with 2 layers of fabric at a time, but this one was a little shy here. It's got a rough edge. So let's trim that down a little bit more. Let's use that 5-inch curve and get as much as I can out of that with the fabric that I have. So this one is a little skinnier. That's okay, because this is applique and we don't have to have pieces that are exactly the same size. All right, so we only have a tiny little bit of waste here. We have a tiny little bit of waste right here, those little points from our lemon-shaped leaves. I'm going to set those aside. I might not throw those away just yet, because maybe there's a way we can use those in our other butterflies. So let's assemble this butterfly. First, I'm going to just grab a piece of my background fabric, and I had a whole pile of background fabric. Oh, here it is. Okay. I have all these beautiful Michael Miller backgrounds. So I'm just going to grab one of the white pieces. I think it's the soft white rather than the pure white. That's such a pretty one. And let me lay that out on my ironing table here. I thought I had another piece of fabric. Oh, I ended up using it yesterday. That's right. I used it in my Applique Made Easy class. So let me just go ahead and lay out this white fabric. And I'll give that a little press so that we can just start to imagine what this butterfly would look like with the lemon-shaped leaves. And this is just going to be my my working station today. I'm not actually going to fuse anything because I want to play around with some different butterfly shapes. Okay, let's see. We've got our little leaves, our skinny leaves. We've got our leftover pieces. And remember I said it takes 15 minutes for this fabric to cool. So right now, if I fold these leaves over, they're going to stick to themselves. So I'm trying to keep them all in shape here without folding them over. So let's look. We want to have the top wings and the bottom wings for our butterfly. So I'm going to use the dark color for my bottom wings and the light color for my top wings. And I'm just going to put them out at a little angle here. And then I'm going to cover over here with the bottom wings, making a nice arrangement of our wings. And you know, your butterflies, they're opening and closing their wings. So it doesn't matter how wide open they are or how tight together they are. It's all in your imagination of what your butterfly is doing with those wings at this time. Then I'm going to take his little body section here, that skinny leaf, and I'm going to put that right up the center. And I'm going to decorate those leaves or those wings with the opposite color. So I've got some standard little leaves here. I'm going to tuck those up under for his top wings. And this is where you can get really, really creative. I'm only using one tool right now. I'm just using my Leaves Galore tool. So all I have to work with here are the standard leaves and the lemon-shaped leaves so far. But you could get really creative with this, and you could start using your Hearts and More tools to make circles or to make different shapes to decorate your little butterfly with. So here we go. We're starting to shape up our little butterfly, and it's looking pretty good so far. Let me just give you a little view of that. All right, so he needs some antennae. And in order to make those little antennae, I'm going to take that skinny little piece that I had just cut using the 5-inch curve, and I'm going to cut that again. So I need that 5-inch curve once again, and my rotary cutter. Let's go ahead and cut 2 little antennae, just thin little strips from that leaf. So I'm just going to slide over by about 1/8 of an inch at the most, maybe it's 1/16 of an inch. And I'm going to slide over again and cut another little thin strip. Now, even though these are tiny little thin strips of fabric, they still have the Misty Fuse on the back. So you can go ahead and use these tiny little thin strips as the antennae for your butterfly. Just make sure that you're going to stitch these with your sewing machine. So I would probably stitch these with a zigzag stitch that goes right across the fabric so that you don't rely on that fabric to hold, right? It doesn't have any integrity now because it's just some thin strips. If you pulled on those, they would fall apart. But if we fuse them in place and then zigzag over them, we're going to end up with a butterfly with some little antennae, nice, soft, and thin and light colored, so really rather cute. Now, certainly we could take our leftover pieces of fabric, and even though I don't have a circle template that makes tiny little circles, I'm going to give you a little tip. If you have a hole punch, you could make the little decorations for your butterfly with that hole punch. You can punch out little circles from your fused fabric and use those on the ends of your antennae as well as little decorations for your butterfly. So let's go ahead and add a little circle there. I'm just using my scissors right now. I'm cheating and using my scissors, but a hole punch is a really nice way to make some little circles. Now, the only concern I have with the hole punch is they do get dull and they tend to squish your fabric edges instead of cutting cleanly. So if you do want to use a hole punch in your applique, I would go ahead and buy a brand new one from Staples or wherever you're going to find a hole punch so that you can get real nice, clean little circles so that you can add those to your antennae or as little decorations for your butterfly. So that's a fun little shape to make. And that's so easy because we already have those shapes in our warehouse, right? We already have those shapes in our palette of shapes that we use for Rotary Cut Applique. So what happens when we want to get a little bit more creative and make some shapes that are just a little bit different from that? Well, there is one butterfly here that looks like lemon-shaped leaves, and that butterfly is going off to the side. You're seeing a side view of that butterfly. So let's go ahead and give that a try. So I tell you what, I'm going to pull this one apart. I'm going to use, oh, you know what? No, I won't. I won't. I'm going to leave that one right there. I'm going to cut up some new lemon-shaped leaves, and then we will go from there. We'll play with those lemon-shaped leaves because I only need 2 for the side view. And so let me just cut up one more sample of our lemon-shaped leaves here. So I've been practicing with the Quilter Select rotary cutter. And quite honestly, I have fallen in love with it. I really love this Quilter Select rotary cutter because of the way that the blade is exposed. It's exposed over here like at a 45-degree angle. So I don't have to worry about putting my blade upright when I'm cutting. I can actually lay my blade down and I still get a good cut with these curves. The other thing about this one is it's really heavy. And because it's so heavy, I hardly have to push down at all when I'm cutting through 2 layers of fabric. So I'm finding it really nice to work with. At first, it was driving me crazy because of the way you have to tap it to close it. I still haven't quite figured that out. But when you want to open it, you just really push the button and start cutting. So it's simple to open, just takes a little practice to get used to closing it. And sometimes I have to hit that twice. So let's look at this butterfly right here. The butterfly has his little body and a little round head, 2 little antennae, and our lemon-shaped leaves. So let's go give that a try. I have made that type of a butterfly on my case. And that little case that I'm making is for holding all of our Leaves Galore tools, all of our Hearts and More tools. So I've made this type of a butterfly in the past, but I didn't have this picture to work with. So I'm probably going to modify my shapes a little bit from that standard lemon-shaped leaf. I'm probably going to modify it just a bit to see if I can get it to look a little cuter and a little bit more like the picture. But this is what it looks like with the plain lemon-shaped leaves. Isn't that pretty? I really love that butterfly from the side. So that class that I'm teaching is going to be starting, I think it might be starting in April, and it's going to be several months long. So we're going to be introducing our Ahead of the Curve members to that pattern, and they're going to get the pattern in the class. Their classes are included in the membership at the gold and platinum leaf level. So those of our members that want to take the class called Quilters Keep, you're going to be able to do that over a 3-month period. So we'll make the basic applique in 1 month. Then we're going to learn how to assemble that bag with all of the interior parts. It's got amazing zipper pockets and all different types of mesh pockets, all kinds of wonderful pockets to hold all of your Rotary Cut Applique tools and projects. So that's coming up. I can't quite remember when, and I don't have my schedule. It used to be on the wall over there, but I pulled it down. But watch for my website and watch for my newsletter to find out when that class will be happening. Okay, so we're getting ready for that class by learning how to make a butterfly that is only going from one side. So we've got a good start here already. We've got just our 2 wings that are the lemon-shaped leaves. But I'm going to see if I can modify that slightly so it looks a little bit more like this one. And quite honestly, all they did was they kind of shortened up that lemon shape and made it a little fatter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my lemon shape and I'm just going to twist my tool to bring it around and to blunt that end a little bit. I don't want my end quite so long. So I'm going to take off a little of that end. Let's see if I get this rolling again. Okay, so it doesn't have quite as long of an end, and it turns in a little slightly different direction. And let's see, does that help us with our butterfly? I'm not so sure that it does. I don't think that that really adds anything exciting to our butterfly. But if we put it this way, we just have a little bit less overlap here on our 2 lemon-shaped leaves. So I'm not sure that that really gained us anything. So let's try some of our Hearts and More tools instead. What if I take that lemon-shaped leaf and I'm going to put it down the way that originally was. So it's got the big long point up here and this tiny little point that I just cut off down here. I just made that a little bit blunt on the end. So that's not very unique. If it starts off, in fact, let's start off with a plain lemon-shaped leaf and see if we can adjust it slightly to make it look a little more interesting or different. So we could use one of our Hearts and More tools and give that end a slightly different curve. And I'm trying to find a curve that will make it more exciting. And I'm really not coming up with anything that's too exciting here to change the shape of that curve. But there we go. That's something unique and different, isn't it? I kind of like that shape. And what if I put that shape here for my bottom wing? Yep, that looks a little bit more like the picture. And I think I'll do the same thing over here on this top wing. So let me line up my lemon-shaped leaves. And then I'm going to figure out what I did on the first one and do the same thing on the second one. So I'm using template B, large end, and I'm just using that larger curve in order to change the curve on the lemon-shaped leaf on one side of the lemon-shaped leaf to make it asymmetrical. So I end up with my lemon-shaped leaf on this side and then a sharper curve and over here. So that's interesting. It's something a little bit different, and I kind of like the way that looks for a butterfly. That's really nice. So let's go back, and we need another body segment. Let's go back to our fabrics, and I'm going to cut a few more body segments because I have a feeling we're going to need a lot of those for our butterfly. So here's a thought. Let's go ahead and cut a full 5-inch curve, and from that full 5-inch leaf, I'll be able to cut 4 body segments because I've got 2 layers of fabric. So I'm going to cut a full 5-inch leaf, and then I'm going to go halfway across and cut a section using the 5-inch curve. Then I'm going to spin around. If I had my rotating mat, that would be helpful. And I'm going to cut another section from that 5-inch curve. Now, this is a fun thing to do because you end up with this additional little design element that looks just like a pointy flower. I use them as drop flowers sometimes because they start off nice and skinny, they get wider, and then there's a little point on the bottom. So I like this shape, and that would be a pretty shape to decorate my butterfly wings with in a future little butterfly. But let's continue to work on this butterfly that's flying up sideways. He's really kind of cute, but he needs a little body segment and some antennae. So I've got his little body segment here. Let's see if that's too large. You know, it's not bad. It's not bad. I think it could be a little bit more delicate than that. So let's cut this one down even further. So we need some antennae segments. Let's get those first. So I'm just going to slide over slightly and cut a little sliver. I'm going to go ahead and cut another little sliver. We'll have some ready for the next one. And then let's see if this body segment is going to be too thin. Oh no, I think that looks really good. Okay, so one thing that I think I'll need again is a little round head, and I don't have any Hearts and More tools that will make the head the size I'm thinking of. I think I want about a 1/2 inch circle. So I'm simply going to spin that around and cut that out of my leftover bits and pieces of fabric to cut a little 1/2 inch circle. So there we go. We've got a head for our butterfly. We're going to grab these antennae that we had already cut. I think I'll take one long one and just snip it right in half, and then use that here. Okay, these might be a little thick. And what you can do for your antennae, instead of using fabric itself, you can simply do some thread play. You don't need to have fabric for these tiny little antennae. They're a little too substantial, I think, but still kind of cute. So you can make your own decision whether or not you want to use the fabric or just your thread. It's a wonderful thing when you are quilting to, well, first of all, I would blanket stitch all of this. But when you're quilting, you can absolutely come down here and make some swirls as though the butterflies are flapping their wings. So you can create all of your texture and movement in your quilting phase. So I do like this butterfly. I think he has a little bit more character than the one with the straight wings. So wouldn't it be fun to play with this shape and make a full butterfly over here as well? So there's another idea for a butterfly. Now, a butterfly shape that I really love is this one here with, it looks like a monarch butterfly. So he's got this curvy section to his wings. So I need to figure out how to make that curvy section on the wing of a butterfly. And that butterfly wing is basically a triangle shape. So let's start with a triangle and see what we can come up with. all these little bits and pieces I'm going to leave up here. So if I need something to decorate my butterfly, I'm going to have all these little bits and pieces all ready. So we need a triangle to start with. Okay, well, I'm not very good at geometry, but I can grab one of my regular rulers and I can cut a simple triangle. So let's give that a shot. And that triangle, is it going to be a full triangle? I think it's going to be just about the triangle that I've got here, a 45-degree triangle, just like I've got here on my ruler. So let's give that a shot. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use one of these. Let me cut a straight edge so I can start my triangle on a straight edge. And then I'm going to just cut in this way. And let's see what I come up with. I'm really just playing because this is applique, right? You don't have to have precise pieces that have to match up so that you can piece these together. So I'm simply cutting a couple of triangle shapes, and let's see what we can do with that triangle shape. I'm going to need 2 identical wings. So let's, first of all, I should have put 2 dark pinks together to cut 2 identical triangles. But that looks pretty good. I'm already on the right track. So I've got a triangle right here. Let me just trim it down so they're both exactly the same size. And I'll do that with the light pink as well. And then let's see if that triangle is going to be his wing here and here. Now I want to round this outside part of the wing. So I'm going to put the 2 of them together again. Isn't it fun to just play together? I love to have a play date with you, and we are discovering new ways of doing things together. I've never made this butterfly before, so we are just experimenting to see what we can accomplish. So I'm taking my tiny little Hearts and More tool. This is the Hearts and More A. It has the 1-inch end and a 1 5/8 inch end. And I'm wondering if I'm going to be able to cut out that butterfly wing with that little 1-inch end. So I'm placing I'm going to grab my rotating mat here because it's going to be easier to cut with a rotating mat. Also easier to show you up at the camera here. So I'm going to cut off the rounded end of that triangle with the 1-inch curve. Then I'm going to continue around to swoop out that wing on the butterfly. And then I'm going to have to deal with that bottom curve as well. So let's start up here and just swoop out that side. And then we will move forward to see what else we can do to make that butterfly wing look really pretty. So I'm actually running this area right here parallel to this side of the triangle right here. That way I only cut out that top end in a little swoop, and I still have room down here to swoop out this bottom corner as well. So let's give that a try and see what we come up with. I just love playing with these shapes, playing with the tools, and seeing what I can do. I don't pre-record these sessions. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't play with these shapes ahead of time. I simply play here with you and we discover together. And I think that's the fun part of getting together for Sewing in Slippers with Sue. So even though I said I really love that rotary cutter, I'm not as accustomed to that rotary cutter as I am to my 28 millimeter rotary cutter from Olfa. So I just switched back to my Olfa cutter because I feel like I have a little bit more control with that rotary cutter. I really know a little bit better what's going to happen with that rotary cutter. Now, of course, this inside curve is always difficult to cut. Whenever you're cutting an inside curve with your rotary cutter, there's a tendency for your rotary cutter to get stuck on the inside curve of your tool. And what that does, that makes a little rough area on the tool. So you're going to want to take an emery board or a piece of sandpaper and just sand that out so you're not catching your rotary cutter on that little sliver every time you go over that edge. And that's true on these bigger curves as well. sometimes you might catch the edge of your template with your rotary cutter. It makes a little sliver of plastic right there. You've got to sand that down in order to prevent your rotary cutter from catching on that every time. But let's see what we've achieved here. We've got our little rounded top to our butterfly wing. Let me show you what we've got so far. So we've got a little swoop here from our 1-inch curve. Now we go down and around, and now I'm going to swoop that with my 1-inch curve as well. So I'm just going to change the orientation of that 1-inch curve so I can round out the bottom of that wing. Now I'm not sure the 1-inch curve is the right one to use. Maybe I wanted to use the 1 5/8 from the other side, but let's give that 1-inch one a try and we'll see what happens. I kind of like it. It really looks pretty to me. Now, when I'm cutting around these tiny little tools, sometimes I have to clean up those edges, and I just keep working at it until there's no more fabric sticking out beyond the edge of the tool. So I'm just cutting off a little smidge at a time until it looks pretty. Now, I love that shape for my butterfly wing. I think that's really beautiful. It's got that nice little curve here, an inside curve, and then another outside curve. So I really like that shape. And I'm wondering, when I put the two of them together, if those triangles are just way too long. So let's see what else we can do. Maybe I'm going to take this curve and swoop it down here to shorten that triangle. So let's put them both back together again. And then I'm going to play with which curve would work to swoop that down. And the 2.5 is just a little bit short. Let me try the 3-inch curve and see if that's a little bit better. Oh yeah, that's a better curve right there. So I think that that's a nice way to swoop this one down and create a beautiful little butterfly wing. Now you're probably saying, this seems like a lot of work when I could have just cut that out with scissors. Well, absolutely. This is not a direct method because I'm experimenting. But if I can get this down and I say, okay, first we're going to cut with this curve, then we're going to cut with that curve, we can make something that's really beautiful. Now look at that by itself. That is a beautiful little moth or butterfly just by itself. And all we need is a little body, a little head in there, or just that by itself gives you the indication of a butterfly without going through all that much work. Or this can be your top wing, and let's go ahead and create a bottom wing for this little butterfly. I think that bottom wing probably needs to also be in the dark pink. I think the light pink is going to be too light. So let's grab another piece of our dark pink and let's find a different way to create the bottom of that butterfly. So I think I'm done with my S-shaped curves. I think I'm done cutting my standard leaves and my lemon-shaped leaves. So let's go ahead and use the rotating mat. And I'm going to cut out something that looks like a flower petal, right? Like a daisy petal. That's going to be appropriate for that next wing. But I want to cut out 2 at a time. And generally, when I'm cutting on the Hearts and More tools, I'm only cutting out 1 at a time. So let's see what I can do. Well, I could fold this and then cut 2 at a time. So I actually have 4 layers here. And I think I would normally do that, but this fabric is still sticky. I haven't let it cool quite enough yet, and it's still a little bit tacky. So I think rather than doing 2 at a time, let me just do 1. So I'm going to fold my fabric just wide enough for that leaf shape. And I'm going to cut out on the arrow with my Hearts and More tool, just a basic daisy shape. But I don't want it as long as that arrow. So I'm just going to tilt my tool and I'm going to make it maybe a little bit fatter than the arrow. I'm going to go 1 notch past the arrow and I'm going to go to the letter Q on my tool. I can always make it shorter, but I can't make it longer. So let's go to Q on the tool. And I need 2 of those. So I'm going from the 10-degree marking to the Q. 10 degrees to the Q, 10 degrees to the Q. Just remember, we're going from 10 degrees to the Q, and then you'll get the same size shape every time. I think it was 10. I hope I didn't do 20 the first time, but it's going to be close enough for applique. Applique doesn't have to be perfect, but oh, I did it. I did it. I think I did the 20 to the Q. I did 10 to the Q both times, and that worked out perfectly. So let's take a look. We've got our cute little butterfly wings here. We've got these bottom wings here. Let's put those together, and let's put our top wings next to them. And there you go. Look at that pretty little butterfly. Now, I do think that that circle is a little bit too large on the bottom. Although, you know, it's really not. It kind of works, doesn't it? So I could rearrange these a little bit. I'm going to bring these wings up so that bottom curve really shows. And if I bring these up, I think these should be a tiny little bit smaller. So I had used template B, small end, and I'm going to switch to template A, large end. And I'm just going to make these a tiny bit smaller. Template A, large end. Look at that, right on the arrow. That's going to be the perfect size. So let's go right on that arrow. I'm sorry, I've got such a mess here. By the time I've done a little bit of cutting, I've just got all kinds of things going on in my sewing room. And I bet you can relate to that. Once you start cutting, don't things just tend to go everywhere? So once again, I'm on the arrow on Hearts and More template A, on the large end. I'm just going to trim up that bigger one, just trimming off a little tiny bit so that I get a slightly smaller, lower butterfly wing. And oh my gosh, I think that's amazing. That is such a pretty butterfly. It's prettier than any butterfly I think I've ever made with my Hearts and More and my Leaves Galore tools. So there you have it. You know, it's all about playing. We can't have a tool that does every single shape. But if we can take our triangles or our rectangles, our squares, and we can round those edges with the tools, then you have a whole wide range of shapes that you can create in addition to our standard applique shapes. And then the sky's the limit. You can play with those and make any type of character or you know, you can really use your imagination, create any kind of shape you want to for your applique. Now, it's not as straightforward. I don't have a picture and then I'm just going to trace it and cut it out with my scissors. I'm really having fun playing with my tools to get the most out of them that I can. If you find this more cumbersome, go back to the method where you trace and you cut out with scissors. But I just find it's delightful to try and see what we can do. I know that my workhorse shapes, I can cut those with the Leaves Galore and the Hearts and More tools, lickety split. But then when I go and fine tune and really have some fun with it, I can cut the vase shapes. I can cut all of the different animals and critters. And so that's why I love to experiment here with you here on Sewing in Slippers with Sue. So I'm going to go over to my comments here. And just go over and see what you are all saying. Well, Savannah's on a roll. She is having some fun with this butterfly. Ellie, good morning. And Jody, thanks for coming. Mary, nice to see you here. And Terry, let's see. The designing the butterfly, it would be handy to have the overhead view. Absolutely, Savannah. So I have to decide. Do I go back to using Zoom where I can only live stream to one place on Facebook? Or do I use StreamYard and have the limitation of only one camera? So we'll have to play with that. I think if I did pay a lot of money, I could use 2 cameras on StreamYard, but that's a lot of extra investment. That's not worth it for me to do that. Fantastic. The small zigzag, yeah. With the very small zigzag, you can go over the antennae and you're going to go off the edge in both directions. So you want your zigzag to be as wide as that fabric is, so it holds it all down and it doesn't allow it to fray. I would match the thread to the antennae. That way it just disappears. Yeah. They appear to be opposite dark and light, and that's why I ask. Yeah, I would tend to match the antennae color. Unless you are doing something where you want that antennae or a thin line. Say you had a thin line and you wanted it broken up by your background color so it looks like an intermittent line, then I would use the background color. But in this case, I want it to be a solid line, so I would use the antennae color. Okay. Oh, I see. Disregard your question. Got it. Okay. Yes, the only limit is your imagination. I love it. And maybe Zoom to YouTube, easier to go hunt for the topics. Well, Kathy, I absolutely agree with you that it is easier to hunt for the topics, but my Sewing and Slippers needs to be on Facebook. That Facebook is my primary group where I do most of my communication with my students, and so I do need it to go to Facebook. So that's why only StreamYard will stream to both, and that's why it's important for me to try StreamYard and see if I can make it work for both. All right, everybody, that was really fun to play with some butterfly characters today. I just love that last one that we created. I think that I'm going to refine that version and give you some instructions for that in our Ahead of the Curve membership. We're going to continue to add videos into those technique videos so you keep getting a really diverse group of instructions that you can use to create just about anything with applique. So thanks for joining me today. It's been a load of fun. I'll try to get this video edited, and eventually, not too soon, but eventually I'll get it uploaded to my website for our Ahead of the Curve members. Have a good day today. It was so much fun to spend my time with you, and come to Applique School next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. If you'd like to see what's coming up next, we will have an announcement about our True Colors of Springtime quilt that's going to be starting again as a quilt along in June. So get more information on True Colors of Springtime as well as our Ahead of the Curve membership when you join me for Applique School March 4th, 5th, and 6th. I hope I'll see you there. Bye, everybody. Have a great day.